of workshop meetings that we have been hosting for the proposed septic inspection at Transfer Wall. Can you guys hear me okay on the Zoom too? And in the
Yes.
room? Dan, can you hear us? Supervisor Bruno, can you hear us on the Zoom okay? Okay, I can see you moving and you're not muted, but I can't hear you. So thank you, Supervisor Seaver. I see your thumbs up too. I'm going to keep going and hopefully we can fix the incoming sound so that we can hear people on Zoom. Is that okay, Mike? If I keep going, will they be able to speak into us? Okay. Okay. All right, we have the agenda itself is very short, but attached to the packet, you should be able to see the proposed law as it is right now with the track changes. As far as just the order of things, I'd like to go through and have the committee work through particular items in the proposal as it stands right now, particularly in the beginning toward about the applicability. Second, some work on town involvement in this process. And then lastly, in the administrative review section of the proposal, we haven't gone through that as a work group yet, so I'd like to do that. And then after we talk about that as a committee, I will open it up for public comment. And then hopefully at the end, we will have a proposal that we can move forward to the full Board of Supervisors workshop, which is next Wednesday afternoon. Does that sound okay to the committee members? Are you okay with that sort of outline of things we're going to cover? And then move it on to the workshop next Wednesday. Okay. Hi, Supervisor Thomas. We're just getting started. Thank you. It's okay. We know there was some miscommunication about the time starting. And I'm going to remind you guys as committee members, we have to speak right into the mic so they won't be able to hear us. So we're going to have to share and take turns. No shouting over each other. Not that we do that anyway. Okay, so moving right into our discussion in the first the first area that I'd like to discuss is the applicability section, which is on page 1 in section D. And I'm going to turn it right over to Supervisor Leggett for your comments with respect to that.
Sure. On the applicability, one technicality on the first thing, this kind of law shall apply to all developed real property in which located on-site wastewater treatment system. Should that all be capitalized and then in parentheses have OWTS because that's referenced later in there.
Great. Yep.
Now, these first two sentences that say for all properties and which are situated within 250 feet of the mean high water mark of the water bodies. So that's who it applies to. Then it says county finds that it's appropriate to include all developed real properties within 200 feet of the mean high water mark and water bodies specified in Appendix A and serviced by an on-site wastewater treatment system, regardless of the distance of the on-site wastewater treatment system from the body. So that establishes, it sounds like everything in the county that's within 200 feet of a designated water body, let's say by Appendix A.
Right.
And then it goes in, it shall not apply. And this is where things get complicated. So it'd be City of Glens Falls, which it's usually municipal service anyways.
Wait, Craig, before I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Before you go past that, there was a question about whether or not we were going to include tributaries as part of the water bodies. Are you going to talk about that or should we? So far, we have said they are not included.
Right. So on the first sentence here, the county law shall apply to all developed property which are situated with 250 feet of mean high water mark of the water bodies. So without really defining what the water bodies are in that first sentence. So that needs to be corrected a little bit. Second sentence, Warren County finds that it is appropriate to include all developable properties situated within 250 feet from the mean high water bodies specified in A and serviced by an on-site treatment system, regardless of the distance of the system from the water body. So
We
Um,
talked about this, remember? It's like if
Yeah.
there's a piece of property that's within 250 feet of the water body and it goes back, let's say 1,000 feet away from the shoreline,
Right.
and the septic system might be more than 250 feet away from the water body, it's still covered by this law because it has, part of its property is within the 250 feet. So this law is triggered for that piece of property.
Okay. So if that on-site wastewater treatment system is beyond the 250 feet, why should that be triggered? That they need an on-site septic inspection upon transfer because it's outside of all the others that were within the 250. It just happened to have the unfortunate thing of too much land when you're looking at property.
Too close to the property. Well, or it's a fortunate thing for them, but
Sorry.
I don't think so.
So, the main thing is when you look at septic laws and setbacks from, say, water wells, septic system from a water well, 100 feet, maybe 200, depending. So this 250 feet high watermark, I think we're accepting as being okay. Distance of separation. So then, should these other properties, even though they have water frontage, but their dwelling and system are beyond 250 feet from the shoreline, do they need to be included too?
One of the things that makes it difficult for us is that we do not have a zoning district. Like in Queensbury, they made this a law applicable to all the properties in their waterfront zoning district. So in my mind, this 250 feet is just sort of a way for us to set some demarcation as to who is going to be subject to this law and who's not. But I hear what you're saying, and maybe that goes to, and if we want to change it, that's the will of the committee to change it to if only if your septic system is within 250 feet. I mean, I would argue to you, there's probably people who don't even know where their septic system is. So then how would they know if they're in or not? But this, where you say your property is within 250 feet of the water, that's very clear.
And for further clarification, were you thinking, let's say you have a lakefront lot, it's 150 feet, and then there's a back lot that's within the 250 feet. That lot is also.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
covered by this. So,
Yeah.
so,
But let's go with that. So let's say there's this, a secondary back lot and it has its septic system, way far back. I think that's where you could go to the administrative appeals section and come to the county committee and say, my septic system is, 2,000 feet from the water. Do I really have to apply? Do I really have to have this law apply to me? And then the committee could rule, no, you don't.
or could that just be administratively?
Handled.
Some building code to look at it. It's outside the 250 feet from the mean high water mark. It's not happening.
Well, if we want to do that, I think we should change the law to say that.
Or change the law to say that in such a system within 250 feet.
Right.
matter if it's on the lakefront lot or the.
Right. I'm not gonna make that proposal because I think that muddies the waters, so to speak. Yeah. 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 So we would need to change it then to say if this only applies to develop real properties where the where the on-site wastewater treatment system is situate within 250 feet of mean height. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Is that what you want, Frank, too? All right, Sylvia,
Can we ask zoning?
Yeah.
Somebody from zoning?
without objection? I'm gonna ask you to go to the podium so people out there in the Zoom land can hear you too.
For the record, my name is Jim Steen. I was a zoning administrator close to 8 years. I just left about a month and a half ago. Well, I did it for 7 years. I was pulled back into service after a year. But anyway, that was one of the first questions, because you could have a property that's 251 feet from the lake, and this law does not apply. And like you said, you could have a lot, but your septic system is 1,500 feet from the lake, so this does apply.
Yeah.
How about if you provided an engineer's letter certifying that the system is not within 250 feet of the lake? Would you be exempt?
That's a good idea.
Just a thought.
And that could go under
Exemptions.
exemptions and exemptions or deferrals.
What else do you have up your sleeve?
Well, I have quite a few, but I was gonna wait for the public comment unless you want me to jump in when you guys are at that section.
Yeah, why don't you do
Listen,
that?
first of all, let me state for the record, I think this is a good idea in theory.
Yeah,
The applicability and enforceability of it, the county had the resource, all that, I do have questions with. And there are some specifics in here that I would like to address, but I can wait till the public or the floor comment.
if we hit those sections while we're talking, why don't you jump in?
Absolutely,
And then if we didn't cover it, in that time, you can hit it at the end.
terrific.
Okay,
I'll just raise my hand
yeah,
when it sounds like the discussion is ended.
okay, yeah. So what I'm hearing is that we'll leave paragraph D alone, but put an exemption in somewhere that says something to the effect of, if you provide a letter from an engineer saying your actual septic system is more than 250 feet from mean high water mark of the water body, then your property would be exempt administratively and they wouldn't have to do anything else. Page 5 is where the exemptions are.
Page 5, section 2. And added in there, there's 6 sections. Place it in where it makes sense.
Dan, do you have any feedback on that particular exemption item? Okay, I see your thumbs up. We still can't hear you. Hey, Ryan Moore, can you say something, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow the discussion there.
That's okay. I just wanted to know if we could hear you, and we can. So I think it might be on Dan's end of his
Yeah,
thing.
it's very, very hard for me to hear what's going on in that room. The audio is not coming through that well.
Okay, thank you. We'll try to be louder. I could hear Ryan. Yeah, I could too. Hands up. Okay, give me 1 second while I write this down before I forget what I said. What we said.
On the flip side, I can hear just fine. I'm not in the county building, but I just want to let you know, I can hear, it was hard to hear Craig, but everybody else I've heard loud and clear.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman Seaver. Okay, back to you, Supervisor Leggett.
So then with reworking that first paragraph there in the first two sentences, it takes care of all of these Appendix A water bodies and situated within 250 feet. But then it goes on to make exemptions to what this is applicable. And it's the city of Glens Falls, towns of Bolton and Queensbury. And looking through the notes, Supervisor Schrow had commented that because Queensbury has its own building codes, enforcement and stuff, he says to have Queensbury exempted, and they have their own
Yes.
wastewater treatment law anyway. So, my question was here, is this an all-in or an all-out for the towns? Do we make this a law? And then people can opt out on what's called petition, and then that gets added to a list at the end? Or do we say, this is available to all, and anybody that wants to join can join, and that goes on?
No, I think it's, you know, a town should be able to opt out if they choose to, especially if they are planning their own septic program or law, or whatever you want to call it.
But if they don't have one in place, should they be subject to this until they get it in place?
If we're in the process of getting it in place, I think we could go forward with what we're doing in our own towns, which is what we are doing. In fact, our zoning administrator is turning right now to become an inspector.
For your town to
for
implement
our
a program?
town. Yes, yes, he's there today. That's why we have Jim here, and
Mhm.
he's actually, I would like to make a comment about Jim's ability. He has been a trainer. He's gleaned information from every one of the zoning administrators around the area in the county. And we called him back in, and he's been doing training duties. I said he should be a trainer for the county, but he didn't think that was a good idea. But that's why I wanted Jim here today, because I think he has a lot to offer that we probably don't understand like he does.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so
I didn't.
is it the consensus of the committee that we put it back the way, the last sentence where it was allows the governing body of a municipality to opt out?
Yes, I feel that way. I think we should be able to opt out. Thank you.
Frank. Yeah, I'm thinking Dennis. Craig, is that what you want to?
You know, and that works.
Okay,
You have to be able to opt out. I would ask for any comment. Any folks have anything on how this would work?
I'm looking for comments. Raise your hand or come to the podium if you want to say something on this particular item. Okay. They're holding their judgment for later. Okay, that's fine. All right, what else, Craig?
That's all I have for applicability.
Okay, I do think on paragraph, in that paragraph on sentences 1 and 2, I think that those can be consolidated into one sentence. So that we're you know, immediately referencing Appendix A, and it doesn't seem so wishy-washy, like we're including all water bodies, oh, but not really, only those in Appendix A.
Right.
Like, I almost think we could delete,
Bodies specified in Appendix A.
I almost think we can delete the first sentence. As long as, or just kind of consolidate it. If you'll let me wordsmith that a little bit.
Yes.
So the intent still stays the same, but okay, yep. Thank you. Okay, so that's that. Okay, given the discussion in the last couple of days about we had some miscommunication between the Village of Lake George, I think it was, and our code enforcement. person, it got me thinking to what can we build into this law that makes sure that the towns are kept in the loop as these things happen. So I was thinking, if you go to page 4, where it talks about if there is a failure of the system, then the code enforcement department, this is on, if you look at little paragraph 3.
Yeah.
The code enforcement department, meaning the county, shall issue a written notice of violation to the property owner. I was wondering if I should put in there, or we should put in there, a copy of that notice of violation would come to the town too. Okay. Town, is it fine to just say town, or should I say town code enforcement officer? I'll just say town. Okay. And then I thought in that same paragraph, maybe a sentence that says, because remember, this is about if there's a complete failure. Well, not a complete failure, but let's say there's a complete failure and the property owner has to build a new system. Maybe we put a sentence in this paragraph that says, new septic systems may be subject to state and or local approval, and including approval from the town where the system is located.
Which is when needed anyway.
I know, but I just thought that might be a good reminder for people that you're gonna have to come back to the town board or town board of health as needed to get an approval.
So
Is that okay with everybody to add that?
let's go through that paragraph if we can then.
Okay.
So that violation ordered remedy with copy to the town. A compliance agreement between the code enforcement department and the record owner demonstrating a plan to correct each OWTS failure or deficiency shall be required prior to the conveyance of the property. Okay. The remediation plan should be prepared by the record owner of real property or owner's designee in the facility. Okay. Warren County Building Codes Department may engage an engineering consultant to review the remediation plan, and that review further to resolve into the violation shall be at the expense of the record owner unless otherwise allocated to the real property conveyance. The county, okay, so the county shall be entitled to reimbursement. So.
I mean, that's kind of worst case scenario.
That is worst case
But you
scenario,
have to have all scenarios in.
and,
Covered.
this is where it gets dicey with coordinating for the local board of health,
Okay.
because, sometimes these remediation plans will require a variance, and that's in section 5, number 2. Down below. So
Uh-huh.
back-
Okay.
But not to get too far off of 4, number 3. You were thinking of throwing in sentence there.
Yeah. 5, wait, Craig, 5.2 is talking about a variance from the county, not a variance like I think you're thinking of Board of Health variance. But you're right, maybe I should say, the language that I'm thinking of adding to paragraph little 3 up above should say something like the remediation plan may require approval by the local Board of Health. Okay,
And on that, I know that on lakefront properties, and we got this from the town court, and referring them a lot to the, to the town. for review, right? We do that. Yeah. So that's the further engineering review.
wait, what language are you writing down now?
I'm not.
Okay.
May require
I'm
Board of
writing-
Health approval.
Remediation plan may require state and or local approval, including approval from Board of Health where system is located. Town Board of Health,
Board of Health.
local Board of Health, thank you. Do I need to put all that? No,
No,
okay,
it's showing
all right.
what it is in each town.
Okay, that's great. So that takes care of that. Yes, Jim,
I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this.
please don't.
However,
We're doing so great.
I'm having I don't know if it's just a language thing with a variance or a remediation plan. Like, let's just say you have a seepage pit that is 100 feet from a body of water that is failed. State 75A says seepage pits.
No
need-
more. Yeah, right? They're not allowed.
Correct.
Right.
Right, okay. So now if you're, well, I'll back up a little. New York State DOH requires all septic systems be designed by a licensed engineer.
Mm-hmm.
This specifically says remedial plan shall be prepared by the record owner of real property or the owner's designee. Doesn't this conflict with that DOH requirement that an engineer design a system? Where I could just come up and say, you know what, I'm gonna put a leach field here, whether it's compliant with the 100-foot separation from body of water or not, I am still designing that system.
No, we can't let that happen. No, you're right. Hold on. Let me just think. We do, so when so a lot of times the remediation plan, according to what we're hearing from the experience so far in like Queensberry, is that the remediation plan is often just simply maybe clearing a blockage of one of the lines or straight leveling out the D-box. And it's my understanding that they wouldn't need an engineer's plan for that kind of thing.
Correct.
But you're absolutely right. If the remediation plan happens to be, you need a whole new system and under state regs, you would need an engineer to design it, then yes, obviously they need to comply with that. So if there's language in here that we need to make that clearer, that in the event that the remediation plan needs to be done by an engineer, it can't be done by the owner.
Okay.
Maybe we should separate and distinguish between a remediation plan
And
the
a
design
replacement
system.
of a system.
Like the remediation plan may say you need to replace the system,
And then
right,
you must comply with all,
article
everything that, I mean, and that's worst case scenario. That isn't gonna happen in every case, but you're right. I don't want people to think they can just go out and draw their own little
Right.
thing.
Yeah, I don't know a solution to that, but I just wanted to bring the attention. Because right up here on Route 8, the north end of Grant Lake, we have a lot of properties that are only 50 or 60 feet deep. So there's no way you're gonna get a compliant system in there. The older system, some people don't even know what's there. We get calls all the time, you know, where my septic is, and we don't know, they put it in the 50s. So anything that's done there is gonna require a variance, pretty much, except maybe swapping out a tank, provided it's 50 feet from the lake. And you know, that goes to the whole variance process. Is the variance process, would you want me to wait till we get to that section?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
Okay.
Unless, if you think it can, wait.
No, no,
Yeah, okay, okay. So we'll add something that says where the system fails and the remediation plan may require a new system, it must be designed by an engineer in accordance with state rules. Or something along those lines. Jim, would that
Yeah.
be better? Okay.
David?
Good afternoon, Supervisor McGowan.
Okay.
I don't know why I went right and not left. But I just paid here, so I'm right. When I'm in the car, I have to keep in mind.
Okay, well, no one on Zoom can hear you unless you're speaking right into the mic. So when you're ready, I'll pass it to you.
It's not just state, but it's for town sanitary code.
Okay.
Because that's a local law. So, we wanna, try to get it. And see how it works from this.
Okay. I think that will really help to clarify. Anything else on that on page 4 before we go over to page 7. Under section K at the administrative appeals and or variance process. Yep,
Can we hit number 5, 2? The owner seller transfer has obtained a variance from any requirement imposed hereunder. So that is just for this local law, not them being subject to this local law. It's not a variance for their septic system.
right.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Which, so that leads us right to 7, which is the discussion about variances. Which in my mind are more things like, I am selling my property in the middle of the winter. This law does provide for that, but maybe you have some other weird issue that mean that you can't comply with this and you need some variance from this law prior to your conveyance.
Hey, how about number 7 on page 5? Upon receiving proof of a satisfactory LWTS inspection, code enforcement department shall issue in the name of the current property owner a written certification of satisfactory septic inspection confirming been inspected and the results are in conformity with the requirements of this law. Issuance of such certification dated within 3 years prior to actual conveyance. So,
Constitute.
presumptive proof. There also needs to be some communication to the town with that.
Copy to the town,
Yeah,
copy of the satisfactory
yeah.
septic inspection. Okay,
Because here's something
Yeah.
that's going to happen right now as modern systems are being permitted. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but all these maps now exist at the town zoning office. So when there is a time for a transfer, a potential buyer can come and say, do you have the map of the septic system for this place? And it gets pulled out. So all record of that septic system is housed here in each local town. So to have record of that helps the customers in the future too, of having the town record. So just have the county.
that's great. We'll put that in.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, now can we go to 7? Page 7,
Page 7.
section K. So from zoning principles, the analogy is that there's 2 things. The variance, like I explained just a second ago about maybe you have some really weird issue with your property conveyance and you want a variance from this law. Or you get a determination from codes, and I think Charles Wallace is on here. Yeah, he is. That says, his office issues a determination that the remediation plan is not satisfactory. And someone disagrees, then they have an avenue to appeal. And just like you would at a town level, you would appeal to the zoning board of appeals. Well, we don't have such a thing at the county, so it's set up to come to the environmental and real property committee or another committee with similar responsibility, whatever is in existence.
Well, I was thinking, what about the committee that has oversight of building codes
Okay,
instead of
where is
just
that?
the real property tax? So,
I can't find that section. Oh, it's right in the beginning, K. Okay,
because if you look on the next to last sentence there, for oversight of the real property tax service department shall consider appeals. So why would?
yeah.
Is that to get it out of the building codes?
No, it should not be out of bill. You're right. Do you guys agree? Brad? Dan? Charles?
I'm only getting about 40% of what Craig's saying, so
Can you hear me okay, Charles?
I can, everything, but not much of what Craig says.
Okay, that's because
I'll bring it closer. How's that?
he
Way
wants to, on page 7, in section K about the administrative appeals, where it says the appeals will come to the Oversight Committee for Real Property Tax Services Department. He's making the suggestion that we change it to the Oversight Committee of Buildings and Codes, which totally makes sense. Are you,
Yeah, that's fine with me.
okay. For our listening viewers, Charles is the department head for Buildings and Codes. All right, so we'll do that. We'll make that change. Great.
And then
Yes.
My only question, Charlie, would that overburden you more?
Oh, I think this is going to be a developing thing, so we're gonna see what the workload is, and kind of see what we can absorb, and then have to take it from there. It's hard to say how much is actually going to come out of this when it comes, if we're only dealing with the administrative portion. So we're certainly going to make an attempt just to absorb it in without asking for any more help is what the goal is. But I guess it depends on what the actual workload comes down to and how we are, manage to be able to absorb it in here.
I appreciate that, Charlie. Like I said, we'll just have to keep an eye and stay communicated on it because, let's, we want to keep this moving forward. So, but thank you.
Okay, Craig, back to you.
on K1,
Mhm.
again, Director of Real Property Tax Services. So
Yeah, that needs to be
appeal
Director
shall
of
be submitted to the committee to be served upon the,
Buildings and Codes.
but he's
He's not
that
the
what they're
director.
appealing?
He's what?
Aren't they appealing his decision?
But that's okay because
Yeah.
in the zoning world, you send a copy to the person you're appealing from.
Okay,
He just gets a copy and then he has to provide all of the information to the committee
okay.
for the committee's decision.
Okay.
We'll get rid of he's the administrator, Warren County Fire and Building Codes, blah, blah, blah.
Actually, it already has a copy shall
Yeah.
be mailed to.
So it won't be a copy, it'll be the original. Okay.
To work that paragraph out.
Craig, do you mind if I have Jim come back up?
No, no.
This is the section you wanted to talk about, right? Mm-hmm.
I'm a little confused, and maybe it's just me, but the term variance is typically, are we talking about variances from 75A or just this local law?
Just this local law.
Perhaps that should be in the
Stated.
definitions, where the
Okay.
term variance is referenced, it only applies to this law and not requiring 75A. Because one of my concerns was, suppose there's a non-conforming component, a seepage pit, or even a leach field within 100 feet of the body of water. So that would be considered substantial failure or substantial non-conformity with 75A, correct?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the other thing. Who considers this substantiality? I think it should be
That's right.
quantified by either percentage or distances. But so if a component, say a leach field is going to be replaced, this committee would not have the authority to grant the variance to
No.
put it, okay.
No.
So,
no.
okay, so that
We
clarifies a lot.
we should, I would not like to put the variance in the definition section at the front, because in some instances, we did talk about, you'll have to go get a variance from 75A, but that's from your local Board of Health. But I think here in this section, we should definitely make it clear, it's a variance from this law, not from 75A.
Okay,
I mean, it does say variance from the strict application of the requirements of this county law.
yeah,
Okay, we can clean that up a little bit. Is that good? Okay.
So,
What el- what
in
else?
essence, you're not gonna be removing the authority for
No.
granting variances from a local board of health.
Correct.
Okay.
But let's go back to that in a minute about the substantiality. We've had that discussion before, and I don't think we really hit on anything fantastic.
Yeah, because it is mentioned in a few different
Yes,
places.
it is.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Craig?
So maybe we should go back to page 6 then. I
Okay.
do have on paragraph 3, K3. Does this follow applicable state law? Why not just send them to the DOH? So this is where the committee shall consider all relevant information. The committee may take into consideration various things. Yeah. So on K3, as part of the administrative review, the committee is going to consider all of this information and any undue hardship to the property owner, all other matters relevant to the issue as determined by the committee. Does this follow? As the committee considers this, will the committee also have in hand the 75A or whatever else is going to determine what needs to be adhered to?
I would think that could fall under all other matters relevant to this issue, but we could make that more clear that we could consider the requirements. But I don't want to get into the scenario where it looks like we're giving variances from 75A.
Right, no. So I guess for the local law, should the attorney for the county look this over to see if we have the ability to do this? Or constrain?
I see Bob's little bubble lit up. He's definitely listening, and he has looked at this. I don't know, he's looked at the law. I don't know if he's looked at K3 specifically.
And I'm taking notes right now, actually, as you're talking, so
Okay, thanks.
for me to look at here.
I
Yeah,
would think that we would rely on our building codes director for that information. I mean, that's, we're not, none of us are experts on this, but he should be.
Right, that's a good point.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Bob, I think we're okay with that one, but if you want to take a look at it and let us know if you see any problems later, that's fine.
I will. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to where it does talk about the failures. And let me just see, where is that talks about the substantial? Oh, yeah. We did talk about this. It is on my version. It's still on page 7 at the very top. It's section I, but numbers 11 and 12. I thought we changed this, but maybe we didn't come up with anything.
Well, if we can, I think I remember reading this whole thing to everybody last
You
time.
did.
Sorry. But because this is the big one, this is where the rubber meets the road on it. What's the substantial? So this is what everybody's going to go to is section I, failure of the on-site wastewater treatment. So the inspected system shall be deemed to be failing or be a substantial failure or substantially non-compliant if it fails to meet the Department of Health, DEC standards for OWTS of the kind inspected. A non-compliant or substantially unsatisfactory OWTS includes the following examples. So this is where we really need some feedback. And it seemed to have covered.
Yeah, I think,
everything.
so for numbers 1 through 10, they're pretty clear, they're objective, there isn't a lot of wiggle room there. We did change number 3. That was at the suggestion of Dave Wick, who I think is also on.
Yeah.
I know he has stuff going on in his office, but he may be available to weigh in on that one. he said we should remove the language about into a dry well because discharge of gray water into a dry well is still permissible, is my understanding. So we're gonna delete the dry well part because we don't want that to be a substantial failure. Yes, Jim? Yeah, please.
Just take the chair up there, Jim.
My understanding of 75A is that anything that comes out of a sink, shower, washing machine is considered sewerage and must go into a septic system. That gray, you cannot own, you can't put a septic system and just put your toilet waste in. Anything washing, showering, dishes, all that, as far as I know, needs to go into a septic system. I know in the town of Horicon, we no longer allow people to do gray water systems.
Okay. All right.
And I think that's in 75A.
We can swing back on that one. I'll make sure we mark that one, but
And while I'm here, you're talking about,
Yes.
it says where a dye test results. Who asked for a dye test? Is that standard procedure? Do we always do a dye test? And if not, why not? Because then you can see what's actually happening in with the leach field, because unless you dig up a leach field, I understand you have to uncover seepage pits. But if you don't dig up a leach field, you really don't know if those are functioning properly. You could have a property sit for a year, then you pump out, according to this, you pump out the tank, and then you discharge water back into it. And then when water flows into the distribution box, you really don't know if it's leaching properly under all of that. So, the number one question is who requires, under whose authority asks for a dye test? And also, why not do it for all properties?
be my guest.
Being a little familiar with the building trades, the dye test, I would see that would come in if you saw that there could be a potential problem beyond a natural flow, an even flow. So if, in my opinion, a dye test would come in if, say, all right, you got your D box, you got 4 fingers going out. If everything seems to be flowing, equally and fine, then, we're considering the system, working and function. If we seem to have an area that is slower, or it's kind of almost like a perk test, you just want to see if in viewing you feel that there could be a problem and you're not getting, then a particular dye test would be administered, and then that maybe just that run would be dug up. Sometimes it's just one, sometimes the D box goes off and number one is used more than, number
Right,
4,
right.
So, so that would probably be a time that the dye test would go in. It really just, it's more to see a flow.
Would that be at the discretion of the inspector?
I would say that would be the discretion of the inspector, yes.
I'm just suggesting perhaps put language in here stating that.
I mean,
or would that be part of the appeals process? Well, okay, now we're gonna go back, now we're gonna do a dye test. I mean, it mentions dye test, there's no guidance on when or where in writing here that I can find anything.
well, I bring that back onto the inspector, and that's what, the inspector, the engineer is being, he knows, the system, so.
Okay.
Sometimes the dye could show the flow rate, because normally you wouldn't see the flow rate, you can actually put dye in there and you'll see it, moving. So there's a lot of, I'm not an engineer.
Nor am I.
I just know everything rolls downhill, so.
That's good. But while we're on this page, just on that whole section I, shall be considered substantially non-compliant if fails to meet the New York State Department of Health 75A. So does that include separation distances? Is that an automatic failure? if your leaching device is not 100 feet for leach field or a trench system is not 100 feet from body water or 100 feet from any well, is that considered substantially non-compliant with 75A? If it's 75 feet away, is that like, close enough, it's not substantial? It's vague, and I think it's going to create a problem where one inspector is gonna say, oh, that's substantial, another one's gonna say it's not. That's why I think this should be quantified.
That's a great point and a great question.
And the other question raised, and what if it is not compliant with 75A? Does that mean it needs to be replaced?
No, again, that gets to the discretion of the inspector. They are required to be trained in the current inspection protocol. So the system does not have to be completely compliant with 75A, because we understand that some of these they're going to be inspecting are prior to 1970s. And the whole point is to make sure that they are still functioning. And if they are, but not quite compliant with 75A, then it's not a failure. But that will be on the inspector to make that call, basically. But I think your point about the compliance with setbacks is very
Yeah, let's
good.
discuss
And
that
we
a little
should
bit.
come up, I think we should.
Yeah,
come-
because, I mean, even if it's functioning properly, but it doesn't meet the setback, isn't that like kind of an end around of what we're trying to do here is get these systems to be 100 feet from the lake or 150 in the case of seepage pits?
What if we did put a percentage such as if it meets 75% or more of the setback distance there?
I know what the DOH would say.
No, no, they won't.
100 feet's 100 feet. Yeah.
Well, the DOH also allows systems to be continued to use until they fail.
Correct.
And then for replacement systems, sometimes the best you can do is the best you can do. If you cannot get 100 feet, doesn't mean your house has an expiration date and you have to vacate it and demolish it just because you don't have 100 feet from the lake. And granted variances, the local Board of Health and the Adirondack Park Agency, they typically look at it. Sometimes the best you can do is not compliant with 75A, and that's why there's the variance process.
You know, that's a really good point. And it's kind of like, you know, I sit on our local planning board too, you know, back in Queensbury, and, you know, you get the non-conformings and, you know, it's been in place, it is there, and you're not going to be able to get 100%. And there's a lot of lots that aren't going to meet that. And I brought this up in the past that, you know, I'd rather see a 75, 80% working system over a system that's, you know, 20 and 10%, you know?
Absolutely.
So, and this is, the hard part is trying to do this without recreating the wheel again, you know? What do? Well, geez, we might as well just put a sewer line right down the road and just, you know, open up a plant. That's not gonna happen.
Right.
But as the systems of changing, there's newer systems that are coming out there that, you know, now you're down to plastic tanks. You practically can put them in the back of your truck and, you know, and dig a hole and put, you know, with the certain inspections. But there's a series of tanks, there's UV lights, there's systems now where you actually can get your water pretty pure at the end. This is what they say. I'm not, they say potable or portable, potable or portable. I'm not quite sure, but
I'm not drinking
going
it either
there.
way.
I'm not gonna try it, but I'll take their word. But no, we have seen that in some areas in Queensbury, that if you can't meet those compliances, but you know, you can add some of these simple systems that and every day, it like every year we see a change. So so it gets back to really on the discretions, and as Charlie stated, you know, these are the things we're gonna have to work out. We're never gonna hammer anything down, you know, and that's why we'll have the committee to be able to discuss these things, and there's gonna be certain circumstances that we're not gonna be able to, be 100%. And I'm all right with that. What we're trying to achieve is just get a, better systems upgraded, so, we won't have the problems in the future in the Keeper Lake. So, how we do this, you have some really great questions, and this is one of, again, I do apologize for being late, but this is
No, that's-
really
that's-
wonderful.
That's okay. So if a homeowner decided he wants to sell his property, he cannot close on it until he gets, if this law is passed, gets an okay from the county, basically. Now, what if in the interim, all right, say there's a failure of something. The person goes back to the local board of health, gets a variance, puts in a whole new system that does not meet 75A. Would that still qualify in that 3-year time frame of having it approved? You know what I mean? That there's
Yeah,
a town approved system in place.
Yeah.
That, okay,
I think so. Town approved system.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
right, okay,
Yeah, we're happy.
okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Like I said, it's just moving things forward to a better system.
okay.
I don't want to leave that, just the thing about the percentage of a setback requirement, we're not going to touch that then, because 75A says they can't require an existing system to meet current setbacks. Right?
Correct. As far as I know, you are allowed to continue to use the system until it fails.
So the
Then it has to be
setbacks not
compliant.
being met, that in and of itself, we shouldn't consider a substantial failure.
Well, actually, it says substantial non-conformity. A
Okay,
failure-
I'm
failure, I
not,
get
you're
it,
right,
failure's a failure.
non-conformity,
But the non-conformity is kind of questionable and up in the air, and, one inspector may say, yeah, 75 feet is fine, it's not substantial. Another one may say 75 feet, I don't know about this. I think it should be quantified rather than be subjective up to the inspector.
This is the real sticking
And
point.
then, if somebody has an issue with that, then they could go through the appeal process or the variance process.
Okay,
But at least it'd be a jumping off point of
okay.
where to go.
So we would define a non-conformity, because that's not necessarily a failure, as 75%, less than 75% of the 75A setbacks?
There's setbacks, but then there's also the type of equipment. We do have in here metal tanks. That, yeah, number 7, presence of a metal septic tank. Those aren't allowed, but does that make it substantial? So
Well, that's,
Jim's brought up a good thing here, and then this has been brought up by a civil engineer that does a lot of septics in the areas too. Because if you're going out and inspecting, you go, well, what is substantial on this? And especially if they have to put their name on it.
Mhm.
And that's where it comes in. So this is the nuts and bolts discussion to have about this whole law right now.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just don't, if you leave it to the inspector to determine substantiality, you could get to down the line where, oh, don't go to that guy. He doesn't, hire this guy because he lets it slide. You know what I mean? So I think there should be a jumping off point. I am not.
No.
No, I was the zoning administrator.
Don't go to him.
So,
What do you guys want to do?
well, let's separate out substantial failure and substantial non-conformity, first of all.
Okay,
So on the substantial failures are fairly recognizable. Would that be agreed?
Right.
Failure is a failure in some part.
okay.
So, and then we have substantial nonconformity with the requirements. And for example, and I'll relay this, this was from Dave Wick, he was on chat here. He
Oh,
did
is it?
say that
Yeah,
dry wells are still approved as infiltration devices in series with a septic tank. They are not approved as a standalone structure without a tank in front of it. But then again, I think that depends. I know that in front of us, and correct me, in Horton's experience, all septic systems that come through, none of them are having dry wells. They're all having leach fields to be a conventional approvable without variance. That's how they come through, right? I don't see anybody coming in with dry well. No. So,
so for number 3,
So-
we should put those words into a dry well back in.
we can, yes, because it's directly into a dry well,
Okay,
directly into a dry
Alright,
well.
so let's
So
check
that can go back in.
okay.
And also, Dave said regarding dye testing, if the inspector does not have a fluorometer, it's likely to come back with a false negative, i.e. not identifiable by eye. Also, with our sandy soils, it takes longer to have septic reach a water body and generally cannot be done during the inspection. So those were comments from Dave.
Thank you.
So back to non-conformity. If the system is not failing, then you go to, well, is it substantially conforming? So let's say a substantial nonconformity would be the system is working, but the leach field is within 50 feet of somebody's well. That would be a substantial nonconformity. Any nonconformity with 75A would require a variance to fix. They would need to come in, but if it's working and it's there.
Well, that's true. That gets to the, okay, so you have a substantial nonconformity. So you're supposed to come to the county with a remediation plan. Well, what if your system is working? You don't really need a remediation plan other than a variance from the Board of Health or something. That doesn't,
So just,
maybe it can be handled in the remediation plan stage where if it is both not meeting the setbacks and not really working.
yeah, so failures, I think we're all agreed. Failures need to be fixed.
Yep.
Whatever it takes. Now, you inspect something, you go, boy, that just doesn't conform with the rules as they are today. What do we do with that? And it's not failing. Why should they do anything if it's not failing? So what?
Conformity.
Right. Yeah. This is where I'd look to zoning officers and engineers to get some feedback on this. Because, ultimately it's going to be Charles's office that is going to say, well, that's substantially not conforming. And how do you draw that line? And again, the intent of the law is to stop pollutants going into the water bodies. So maybe we should forget about the neighbor's well. But
No, it's to protect people's water too, drinking
yeah,
water.
right. So,
If I may interject 1 second,
yes.
you definitely need a definition for both substantial failure and substantial nonconformity. I can only reference one off the top of my head in the existing building code, and it has to do with floodplain construction. And in that section, there are definitions when it comes to substantial improvements, substantial damage, and all that is defined right out by definition especially in state code, a lot of definitions for terminology may not be exactly the same as what we would think in everyday terms. So without a definition there, I think you have too much room to work around things. And you're in substantial nonconformity. Are you granting a variance to a local law, but you're still going to be not in compliant with 75A? So, we want to make sure that we're not creating a problem with that. Because I don't think in 75A it really actually gets into systems that don't have room enough to be in, are in non-compliance, but they also, it doesn't spell out the terms Jim were using, and I've heard Department of Health use the same terms. Sometimes it is what it is. We do the best we can with the room we got, but that terminology really is not specifically spelled out in there. So I just want to interject the fact that we really need to define what is going to equal substantial nonconformity by definition.
All right, hear me out. What if we just delete number 11? Because in my mind, all the things in numbers 1 through 10 are the substantial failures. It would not be acceptable. And the nonconformity with 75A is not really our point here. We're not trying to make everyone come into compliance with current code. That we've said that all along. It's to make sure that they have a functioning system.
Right. Let me bring up an example over on Loon Lake, pre-existing non-conforming lot along the shoreline. It was a traditional camp built back in the 50s or the 60s up on piers, seasonal, had a metal septic tank and a beehive dry well to it. It came up for sale upon transfer. An engineer went to inspect it, sees a metal tank, first thing, nonconformity, right? And then they go, oh, and this goes into a beehive. Okay, not acceptable, substantial nonconformity. So therefore, that at the town level triggered, you need to replace it. Yeah. And there were the other things, distance to well, distance to lake, distance to house, all of those things that come into play. Those are the type of properties we're going to be dealing with. And that's what we're going to be seeing. So, so in that instance, the engineer said, this is not substantial because it was a seasonal residence. There was no real way to tell if it was in failure. The septic tank was holding water, but what about the leachate going into the soils and coming out into the waterway? You don't know that. And it takes weeks and such to be able to figure that out. And as Dave Wick said, even if you did the dye test, the time that it would take to get there, how would you know? So here you are at a point of sale. There's a septic inspection going on. They lift the lid. It's a metal tank. Is that substantial enough? Yeah. But let's say that it's a concrete tank and it goes into a dry well, but that dry well is within 100 feet of the shoreline, or it's within 100 feet of somebody else's well. Is that a substantial nonconformity? Would you? Yeah. Talking with DOH, it's basically anything that doesn't conform is a substantial nonconformity. As Chairwoman had said here, this isn't to be able to we're not out to have everybody replace a septic system if it doesn't conform. It's mostly, is it working well enough? Okay, we'll go on. And then it's for the new owners to judge for themselves whether it's satisfactory for them for years to come, and they have a heads up that maybe in the future, you might need to replace this or something. The other thing that tends to happen is that somebody would buy a house like that, and let's say it is not substantial, but it does not conform to the current rules. Chances are they're going to add on to that place. They're going to put on another bedroom. They're going to come in for the permit, and that triggers everything then of where you have to bring it up to code.
That's what we're seeing in Queensbury and the planning board, is a lot of the homes being sold on the lake, or the, according to water, people are buying up these homes, tearing them down, and that's one of the things that we all, see is, an upgraded septic, so.
So to your point on number 11, so maybe if it doesn't conform with 75A as far as this county law, that it should be referred back to the local government. And then that's their decision, their ability to issue a variance. And,
So say something like, if the system is not in conformance with the requirements of 75A, then the property owner must seek approval or from the town board of health, local board of health?
Yeah.
I would think that they would have to become part of the process, because if we're not trying to enforce 75A, if it's a functioning system, then, but it doesn't comply with the requirements of 75A, that's what we're after, is a functioning system. Then if it's, if it's not with 75A, that's more a local issue.
What if we say, if the system is not in compliance with 75A and not functioning as originally designed, that's a substantial failure? Why not?
Because basically, in my opinion, you're saying the same thing it's saying here.
Well, then that's my suggestion.
I-
is to delete number 11, because it's causing confusion.
I mean, I like the fact if we can word it, what Frank's saying is that if it's working, but it's non-conforming, it would be up to the local town Board of Health to make the determinations of what they want to do, you know what I'm saying? Because then, and how far they want to take it. I mean, if they feel comfortable enough, then that way it's not, the sale could still go through without. Sylvia, does that sound something that, I know you had questions and Craig, concerns. And I think Dennis had concerns, but writing something like that, it really doesn't put the burden. It puts it back on the town and then. Because it wouldn't really be a burden.
Well, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's easy, easy for the town to deal with.
With the non-conformity with 75A. Okay, Jim, yeah.
But procedurally, would that just be like, you're gonna refer it to the local town board of health? But still let the sale go through, and then you need a response back from the board of health saying, oh, we're okay with it? Or we're gonna make them, dig it up and put a new one in? So as far as the process of this law of the point of sale, do you have to wait for the local board of health to chime in on the non-conformity aspect of it? Or is it just a referral to tip us off that this situation is occurring? You guys do what you want with it.
I would say just.
No, I'm just listening. First of all, let me apologize. I come from Brooklyn, so I'm very blunt. If nobody guessed it from my accent, but I'm just procedurally and, sitting in the zoning law for 8 years, I kind of look for the unintended consequences and that kind of thing. So if it's a non-conformity issue, but the system is working, and you're gonna let the local Board of Health know, do you guys gotta wait to allow the sale to go through till you hear back from the local Board of Health? Or is it just letting us know?
We need notification, yeah, like a sign off. We need a sign off. You know, basically, so we could issue the CO, so the sale can go.
And if
Maybe
that,
we give
if
the
that sign off
notification.
was that the system is functioning properly and we will not take any action, is that sufficient?
That
Or,
would be
yeah,
up to
like
the town.
30 days, you have 30 days to respond and then the conveyance can go forward.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, I don't have an answer to that. What I think of though is
Well,
that
I-
the planning board often refers to the county for certain projects requiring site plan review. And so it gets referred to the county for their review if it includes so many feet within a county and state highway. And so there's a notification that a board is looking at something. Do you have anything to say? Yes or no? It would be like a GIF to the APA. Do you have any concerns about this? Yes or no? And you get back, negative GIF or positive GIF, and then the appropriate board can move forward with that. So those things come to mind, but other than that,
No, you're right. Okay, I see what you're saying. Like, in our planning board, we'll get a letter from the fire marshals. I don't have any concerns with this project. All right. We have seen things from the county, especially in roads, the curb cuts and stuff like that. We don't have any problem, So if we get a letter from the town saying we don't, or we do, then is that what you're trying to say, Craig? Trying to sign off that,
An advisory opinion.
of sorts, but then who is it coming from? If it's to come from the town board needs to meet, discuss, resolve, and send back. That takes a lot of time and it holds everybody up. The whole intent of this is not to hold up transferences of property. It is just to catch a problem before it continues further. So you want to be able to have it be very efficient, and that means not going to a town board.
Yeah, I mean, the town of Horicon sanitary regulations state, they were written in 1976 also, so they're a bit outdated. But it does say any pre-existing, non-conforming septic system can be utilized until it fails. So therefore, if it's in our code stating that, I think that the town board would be very reluctant to tell these people, you got to replace your system, because our code says you don't have to do that.
well, I'd say it would be behoovious of you to change that code, and update it. a
Well,
little.
that's, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
So maybe it's just an advisory from, if the inspector inspects it and finds it to be functioning, but it's not in compliance with 75A, then maybe an advisory from building codes to the town that the system is functioning, that we feel the sale can take place. But until it fails, these are the issues. It's not in compliance with 75A, and just leave it at that. Don't ask for their opinion back or anything. Just make them aware.
A report or an advisory notice is sent to the town. Okay. I like that because I don't want to hold up the sale either unnecessarily, as long as it's functioning. Yeah.
I just have one other thing that Craig mentioned, the Adirondack Park Agency. On page 3, number 4, it says Adirondack Protection Agency. Is that supposed to read Park Agency? Page 3, number 4. Okay. Thank you.
You clearly read this very carefully.
Yeah, I read it last night.
Yeah. Good retention.
On the same, well, I use my highlight. On the same, right under that, on 1 or I, whatever it is, a resident shall be in substantial compliance with Penn for treatment systems and any local municipal requirements then in effect at the time of the permitted installation. A lot of times we have no idea when systems were put in effect. We also, a lot of systems have no permits or anything. They were either done before we regulated them, or paperwork got lost, or people weren't actually doing their job way back when. So what happens in that instance if we don't know when it was put in or any of that? Or would that be up for the committee in the appeals or variance process to consider?
What's familiar language? What number is that? What page?
Page 3, number 4, right on the bottom.
I don't know how any inspector would figure out the municipal requirements then in effect at the time. of
Right,
it.
yeah.
I mean, I guess if they did know, they would have to make sure it complied with that. But how would they know that? I don't know.
Right. I mean, I got calls all the time. Do you know where my system is or when it was installed? And we have absolutely nothing in the folder because it's so old. We get those inquiries a lot from people that are looking to buy properties, doing their due diligence. But a lot of systems, we have no clue where they are or what they are, which most of them are probably just cesspools. Because it
I
was,
was gonna say probably most of the old requirements are less stringent anyway, so. I would think. I don't know that. though.
I really don't know.
No, and you're right, that is a tough one to figure out, and, you know, a lot of these, Lake George was, these were all seasonal cans, and then somehow they evolved into, you know, year round, so.
That brings up a point I wanted to bring up about bedrooms.
All right, well, hang on, and I just. But I don't know if this was mentioned at the beginning, but a lot of this campaign here is really just educating people too. And that's really what we have to focus on. A lot of people don't know the difference between a septic, a sewer, a cesspool. And that's the whole thing. And you get a lot of people that are coming north that are used to sewer systems and they just flush anything. And, you know, you can't, it's really educating the people and to be mindful of what we're putting down there. And, you know, I don't want to say that I've done my fair share of being in the holes, but I have. And, you know, it just amazes me because we grew up in a system where we had to be careful. And, you know, you have to watch that. And so it's really the biggest part of the campaign is moving forward to is passing the law is also education.
Because Craig has to leave. So, all right, I know we made a lot of changes. I think that we were following along though together. Do you guys feel comfortable moving this to the full committee? I'm sorry, board next Wednesday with the changes we made today?
We still need to iron out that substantial.
Or do you want to look at it one more time? That piece.
I think we need to.
Can we meet prior to the workshop?
What day is that, Wednesday?
Yeah. I mean, like right before it.
Are we gonna figure it out in that time period right before it?
Well, I'm thinking we'll maybe need to send a draft by email. No, it's next Wednesday.
I think we need to get an extension.
How about we meet on Friday?
29th. 24th Friday? Yeah, could do Monday or Tuesday. Not this Friday.
That's right. No, not Friday. Okay.
I think we need to ask for an extension because we can't rush this. I mean, I know we've
We're
been doing it.
making a We have to make a presentation on Wednesday.
Well, we don't.
Right, Chairwoman.
Yes, Chairwoman?
I just want to highlight that the board about 4 or 5 months ago passed a resolution that we had to have this full board workshop to have a presentation on the septic proposal by the end of September. That workshop has been set. I suppose we can, if the, I don't know how we do that. We already had our September meeting. So my only other suggestion would be after personnel on Friday, we're doing Board of Ethics interviews for those that are going to be there. You know, at 1 o'clock, you could try to do a Zoom call and meet and take one last shot at trying to iron it out. But otherwise, I'm not sure what we do about the full board workshop. We have tourism slated from 4 to 5, and then you guys from 5 to 6. And that's no actions taken at that meeting, but it is your opportunity to educate the full board, educate the public on what you've been working on. And, you know, the hope was to have a proposed resolution to the board over that period of the last several months. So
Chairwoman, I
that
think
that
we
was the
can
timeline.
Sorry, I think we can still make a presentation on Wednesday. We've got everything ironed out except for that one last piece. And we can have we can still present the revised proposal that day.
Good on Tuesday?
We have to have our budgets in by the 30th. And I'm coming down the home stretch, but well, that's a fact of life.
I know, and we gotta get them in.
That's right.
Let's
can't
try
screw
to
those up.
set something for Tuesday. Is morning or evening better? What? Oh. Generally, what's better? Afternoon? Yeah. We could do it by Zoom so we don't all have to come together. All right.
Give us some time to check some information.
Okay.
Chairwoman Bramer, I am getting off the call. Do you have a quorum, or do you need me to stay on for a quorum?
We're okay. We're gonna adjourn here in just a second anyway.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got to teach class. I do want to say, I know I didn't meet the gentleman in Horicon. However, if whatever you can do to keep him part of your group, he was phenomenal. I learned a ton in this call, and I just wanted to say thank you to Supervisor Smith and for hosting it. But it's such a different dialogue than even 6 months ago or a year ago or a year and a half ago. So I just wanted to compliment this group. You're doing a great job, and I really appreciate it. And I know so do our residents.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, 2 years ago. We've been working on this for 2 years.
Okay, well,
But
Thank you.
before we do adjourn, I was remiss in not allowing the public to say anything else. If you want to open it up. Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Yep. Yeah, come.
I'll be quick. Christine Hayes, I'm the assessor for the town of Borken and town of Bolton. And I wanted to know, this is for all sales in the towns. Even if Craig wants to put his property into a trust, he has to have a septic review or life estate, every sale.
Every conveyance.
Okay. And who's going to notify the county when a sale happens after the fact? I mean, how does that process of notifying?
We do have worked into the process that real property would look at it, but that at the county, that would be after the conveyance. We can't stop the conveyance.
And as you know, and Bolton is doing this, and so they look to me for the sales each month to go after people who haven't done it prior to the sale. So
Oh,
there is a process in Bolton for that.
yeah.
And
Thank you.
I didn't mean to intrude on a working session. I thought this was a presentation. I guess the one question is, how does this handle new technology systems? Like, I know there may be an incinerator being looked at and aerobic systems. When I look at the definitions, it doesn't seem like it would cover that. And I guess secondly, this doesn't cover bodies of water like Beaver Pond and Valentine Pond and any tributaries? Like I live on a tributary to Brant Lake. That's a Class A stream and I could probably cause some problems. I don't, but I could.
Thank you. Thank you. As far as the treatment technology, no, this doesn't really address emerging technology or new technology because it's really more focused on people who have older systems. But yes, if there was a conveyance happening and the system is only a couple of years old, they'd still need to get an inspection and be able to get a, stamp of approval for whatever the new system requirements are. Okay. That's a good. Mhm. Okay, we'll take a look at that and make sure there's no loopholes there. And we did have a policy discussion. We've had this over and over again about if it were my if I had my say, it would be the whole county, all water bodies. But we're trying to keep it focused on the most public water bodies in the county for now. Maybe down the road, we can expand it.
I think that was part of the concern. If we did too much at once, it would be overburdensome. But the main concern was to start with the queen of the lakes, what really draws the people here. And then from there, we can, once we get a handle and everybody understands the law and they'll know more and they're more educated, then we can expand out.
Anyone else? Dawn, is there anybody on YouTube? Thank you. Amanda. Well, let's plan on it at the municipal center by Zoom as well. Thank you. How about 3 o'clock? 3. Yeah, we said 3. We'll really mean it this time. 3 o'clock on Zoom. Okay. That's our next meeting. Thank you, Amanda. Anything else before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn? Frank and Sylvia, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Dan, thanks for being with us. Bye.